everybody. She introduced. My name is Dipti Mehta. I am from India. That's where I was born and I was brought up, actually in Bombay. And the book takes place, there's a part of the book that takes place in a certain area of Bombay, which is actually known as Folk Lane. And I grew up a little bit around that area, not obviously in that area, fortunately. But growing up, one thing that I always was passionate about was women. Like, you know, I was kind of a feminist growing up. I still am, I guess. But the first piece I wrote for radio was at the age of 13, which was about women in domestic abuse and their freedom. And then there's this folk lane right around the corner, actually called Fuck Lane. You know, the slang is Fuck Lane because that's what happens there. That was forbidden. We weren't allowed to go there. But the buses would pass through there. The taxis would pass through there. So you saw a glimpse of this world, these women. And then Bollywood glamorized it a little bit. So you thought that they were doing this by choice. And it's wonderful what you said, Gloria, because they start to relate to their abusers. And that's exactly what has it feel like this is the choice. And that's what inspired me to write a piece in 2004 around prostitution. I did not know then that I was really getting motivated and really, really inspired by what's going on. And it's so much worse than it even looked. And then I started to dig deeper, and like there were no answers to be found. And I kept looking. And then I wrote Honor that Edie talked about. And I am an artist. I don't know about numbers, but I know about humanity. I know about relationships. So I dug deep into relationships. I'm going to talk about the book Little Sisters. A good book is a book that makes you laugh, makes you cry, makes you angry, confuses you sometimes, and then you go to sleep. Right? A great book is a book that raises questions in your mind. A great book is a book that does quite the opposite. It keeps you awake at night. A great book squeezes your heart into pieces. And you are called into action. That's what Little Sisters is about. It's a great book. When you read it, you're going to be compelled to do something. And we need these kind of books. I'm going to read a little bit out of this book now. And thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Edie, for inviting me to be here and for giving me the honor of reading a bit of the book. So I'm not going to give anything away from the book. You're going to have to read it. But I will take you to a small little journey with me inside of their hearts. On a lazy spring afternoon, after finishing her chores, Geeta flew a kite at the top of a hill, released the string, and watched it skip from wind gust to wind gust. She saw her older sister, Jamuna, with a strange man in the distance. "Look, Jamuna!" Geeta cried out. "My kite's talking to the gods!" Jamuna waved to her, but continued to follow the man. "Jamuna! Where are you going?" Geeta shouted. But Jamuna never turned around. It was the last time Geeta saw her. "Jamuna!" Geeta shouted again. But in response, she heard only the deep and silent hush of mountains and valleys. Geeta reeled in her kite and quickly ran to the ridge that overlooked the valley. "Jamuna," Geeta whispered, "where did you go? Who are you with?" Nervous and frightened, Geeta returned to the family hut and asked her mother where Jamuna went with that strange man. "To work in the city," Kamla replied stoically. "In Kathmandu?" "No, in Mumbai." "When will she return?" Geeta asked. "I don't know," Kamla said in a sad voice and held Geeta close. Jamuna and the man walked 8 hours over hills and valleys and entered a mountainous forest that led to a road where they met a friend of the agent sitting in a car. "She's a pretty one," the friend said. "How old?" "I think about 14. We'll get a good price for her in Mumbai. First, we have to get her across the Indian border." "That shouldn't be hard. We'll go to Nepalganj. There are many places to cross the border there without being bothered by the police." "What am I going to do in Mumbai?" Jamuna asked them. Work, the agent whose name was Lobsang answered. For who? Doing what? Jamuna asked. I don't want to go to Mumbai. I don't even know where Mumbai is. Let me out of here. I'm going home. She struggled with Lobsang, scratched and bit him, and screamed that she wanted to go back to Roomla. The driver stopped the car, and Lobsang smacked Jamuna so hard that she was knocked partially unconscious. Then he pinched her nipples and put his hand between her legs. If you don't stop screaming, he said, I will rape you, then he will rape you, and no one in your village will ever want to see you again. Lobsang kept staring at Jamuna as she curled up and lay on an old mat in the corner of a living room. What a beautiful girl, he thought, who will soon be fucked by hundreds of men. She's a virgin that someone will pay a fortune of rupees to sleep with. He knew her financial value, but at the same time, her beauty captivated him, and he wanted her badly. He was obsessed by the thought that every man in Mumbai would sleep with her but him. She was pure, untouched, had no disease, and she offered nothing but perfect pleasure for whomever took her in that state. He had found her, and he would enjoy her first. He was the one who would fuck her all night, then bring her to Mumbai and sell her to a whorehouse. His obsession with the girl took hold of him. He grabbed her by the arm and forced her to stand up. You will be mine, he said. At least for tonight, I will enjoy you. This is a story, but it is not. I'm sorry. This is what happens in real life to real women. They cannot even speak about it. They cannot come out and talk to us about these things. They, on the other hand, think this is life. They stop trusting people. They fall in love with their abusers. And we go on leading our lives like nothing is happening, and it's so disturbing. Thank you.
I gotta catch my breath, and I didn't even read. Ooh, well, that's just a tidbit. It's an extraordinary story. It's a problem we all have to address ourselves to every day.
You know, it's hard to really go to the depths of what this problem is. It is so completely complicated and difficult. It's economics. It's, you know, as I told somebody earlier, when I was doing this in Nepal, the average income for a family living in the hinterlands of Nepal was $20 a year. $20 a year. People lived a sustainable life. They ate what they grew. They traded a little bit. And a girl was an appendage. You understand? In this culture, we don't understand that. But a girl is born, family is getting $20 a year, and they have not just one girl. They might have 5, 6, 10 children living in these villages. When the girl grows up, she has to be married, or she's a total disgrace to her family. She's not married. The girl and the whole family lives in shame. To marry the girl, they have to have dowries. And these families cannot afford the dowries. They have no money, they can't buy anything. Some of them literally put themselves into indentured servitude for the rest of their lives to get money to pay for a dowry for their daughter. And the girl is, you know, chattel. I mean, a yak or a water buffalo has more value than a girl in some of these societies. And it's really horrible. So they sell the children. These traffickers come and say, I'll give you $200 for your daughter in rupees, you know? And they would sell the daughter. And they would tell the family that she'll go to Mumbai and she'll work and send you money, and we'll put her in a house with wealthy people, and she'll take you to be a nanny. And they go and they sell it to a brothel on Falkland Road. So the problem is so complicated, and it's so deeply rooted in the human psyche that there's no simple solution to this thing. There really isn't. I mean, my solution is that people individually have to change inside. Something in them has to, it's like bringing the mountain to Mohammed, you know? Something in them has to erupt so deeply that they really change inside themselves. I have another solution, you know? I mean, did you see that movie Zero Dark 30? Well, I mean, you know, if they can find bin Laden, they can certainly find all the people that are doing this craziness in the world. And they go in with Navy SEALs and get rid of them. You know, just get rid of them. I mean, all it'll do will be heal the pimple. 20 more years, you're going to have the same problem again until people really, truly change inside themselves.
Speaking of light at the end of the tunnel, one of the things I wanted to mention, as I pointed out before, that I work on legal history issues. I've written a book, Race Law in American Society, 1607 to present. I don't say that because I'm selling it here. I say that because of what I'm going to talk about now, which is the global African slave trade. That's not something I would mention to say on a happy note during Black History Month. I mention it because we did something about that during a time when we said there was nothing that could be done. I think it's very important for us to understand that there have been issues of global proportion that we believed were so institutionalized there was nothing we can do about it, and we did something. So I want us to think about putting these issues in historical context and realize that there were issues involving gender that we thought women would never have the rights they have today, but we did something about it. We thought there would always be lynching, there would always be Jim Crow desegregation, and we did something about it. So I want us to know that each one of us has power. And the passion from this book and the power each one of us possesses, I think should move us forward as we stand and where else we can join hands to do something about this and not think it's so overwhelming there's nothing we can do.
And we have actresses and celebrities of the other professions. There's a baseball player, you know who we're talking about, R.A. Dickey. I just read that he came back from December. He took his two daughters, an 11-year-old and a 16-year-old, and took them to the brothels of Mumbai and let them see those little rabbit warrens. They were all locked up. Guess what this guy did? He got some people together. Of course, he's a famous ball player. He's got millions of dollars. He broke into the brothels, broke in, turned one of them, totally gutted and everything, and turned it into a health clinic. Got the one next door, broke into that one, got those kids out of set it up as a rehabilitation thing. We have before and after pictures. This is a ball player. Well, everybody can do something. Everybody can do something. You don't need to be a specialist to help in this trade. You have to have a heart, and you have to know how dangerous it is. We are in a very bad situation, and I got smart because Stuart told me everything. I didn't know any of this. Yes, we have an important person here. Please stand up. Tell everybody who you are. Come on.
Oh, I didn't expect
Turn around
this.
and
I'm sorry.
talk to the audience.
Hi, my name is Carol Smolensky. I'm the executive director of an organization called ECPAT USA, which has for 22 years worked on issues of child sex trafficking. Initially, we started in Asia when Asians identified that there were large numbers of kids being sold into the sex trade and that was unacceptable. And they reached out around the world and asked groups all over the world to join them in an international campaign to stop this from happening, which is when ECPAT USA got started. And what they said to us is that your men are coming to our countries to exploit our kids. You've got to do something about it. So first I heard of it too. And once you learn that kids are being sold into the sex trade, how do you do something else with your life? So that's what I've been doing for 22 years. Now, ECPAT USA is the US branch of this international campaign, which is now in 70 countries. The headquarters is in Thailand, and there has been an enormous progress over the last 22 years, which you don't see if you just learned about the issue the other day, because it is enormously complex, as Stuart said, and all of the speakers have talked about. Very complex, very ingrained, and that there is a cultural aspect to it, both in Asia, but also in the United States. So I don't want Americans to get off by saying, oh, well, they do that in other countries, when I'm very happy that Professor Marshall talked about the issue in the United States. But there's a lot going on. 22 years ago when we started, there was really no awareness at all about this issue. There were no laws against it, including in the United States. It wasn't until 2000 when the Trafficking Victims Protection Act was passed, and a few years earlier before that when laws were passed that allowed Americans to be prosecuted for having abused a kid in another country. There was no investigation. There were no shelters, and there are now. There were no travel companies doing anything about it, and there are now companies in the travel and tourism field. There's actually been enormous progress, and it's because of people rising up, people like you, and saying, well, this can't be. We just can't have this. How can this be? And especially when you learn it happens in your country, and you say, hey, I grew up in the United States. How can it be that our kids are being sold into the sex trade and nobody's doing anything about it? And so there's actually a movement, and there's a large number now of groups that are working on it. And I'm very grateful to Stuart for writing a popular book that is actually going to be very readable by lots more people than the academic books or the books written for leaders. We need those books too, but I'm really grateful for him doing this book for this audience because it's very exciting.
What is human trafficking? It's the illegal trade in human beings for the purpose of commercial, sexual exploitation, or forced labor. Just to have an idea of what it means. It could be through coercion or through in being induced into service or labor. As was pointed out, what people could do is to say, as was mentioned, there's a job in another part of the country. There's a job in another country, and you'll go work there. But there are also different types of human trafficking. One is labor trafficking, where someone is told there's a job, and then some of those women are then raped by the employer. Others are sold directly into prostitution. There are also little boys involved with this. And we have to think about how we're losing our children and then how those children will look at us. As was pointed out, if they believe the kidnapper is their family now and that they are ruined and unable to go back to their natural family, then what are we to do with all of these millions of people who are now like ghosts? Like ghosts.
You know, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and when she read Little Sisters, she looked at me and said, you know, Daddy, this is incredible. How could this go on in the world? How can this go on in the world? You know, and a couple of days ago, she goes to boarding school up in New Hampshire, and a couple of days ago, I got an email from her about an article she wrote for a newspaper at the school about revolution and about how essential it is to change the thinking of people that are, you know, that are doing this slave trafficking and sexual stuff. And it broke my heart. I said, you know, Stuart, it was worth writing the book just for that email.
There are those women who believe their choice is to use their bodies as sex workers. We do have the state of Nevada in which there is legitimate work called sex work. My concern is that we understand during the African slave trade, these African women and girls were being raped, and they were being used to produce more slaves. And that this went on for some time. As a matter of fact, I'm pleased to be able to give you a sense of the time that this went on during the African slave trade and how early it started. And I have a quote from 1500 that speaks to Christopher Columbus and his use of women during that time and girls. And Columbus wrote this note to a friend in 1500, and I quote, 100 castellanos, which is a Spanish coin, are as easily obtained for a woman as for a farm, and it is a It is a very general, and there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 years old are now in demand. End quote. It is an ongoing battle, and it's one in which the value of a woman is seen through her sexuality. Then these girls were handed over as gifts for men to use and abuse and throw aside, as favors, as toys. That was 1500. Women fought them. Other men stood up. I'm so glad Stuart, as a man, is standing up. We're not saying all men behave in this manner, but we need men to stand up. And I'm so glad there are males in the audience, because we need you. And so many issues, so many times when we have concern that is one where there are majority females involved and other females who are the advocates, we need men involved. We need men involved when there are issues involving children, little girls. We need men to stand up, because sometimes, every now and then, men don't always listen to women. Maybe a vicious rumor. We need men to talk to other men. We need men to stand up for us as well. We're all very strong, very intelligent, very willing to be our own advocates. And there's a saying that women hold up half the sky, but then that means you're holding up the other half. We need you to stand up for us as well. For an ongoing problem, all of us standing together, we can do something about this.
And we've been talking about a lot of work that needs to be done at the end, like how we need to have laws, how we need to get these kids rescued. Work needs to be done at both ends. So there's a huge social, cultural transformation that needs to happen. It's the way we raise our children. Because they have questions. You had questions nobody answered, right? Or they were like, oh, it's their culture. But no, how are we going to educate our sons and our daughters? And who are they going to grow up to be? Because I think it's too late to intervene when there's a pimp. He's old enough, he's gone through whatever abuse he went through. When there's a prostitute, a 35-year, 40-year-old woman, she's already been chewed out. She's been betrayed. The whole sex trafficking trade is a story of the most horrendous kind of betrayal. You can't have these kids start to trust like that. We rescue them, but that doesn't mean anything. That's not really rescue. You pull them out, and they don't know anything else. And the world doesn't accept them. That's us. My mother didn't allow me to go to these neighborhoods. She was so scared. So I think the work needs to happen at both ends. We need to have laws in place. We need to have men rise up, like you said. We need to have awareness. So artists need to get into action, authors need to get into action, and parents need to get involved, teachers need to get involved. Social transformation. Then we meet midway.
There are women involved in human trafficking, and there are women involved in trafficking in the United States. Because many of these girls know better than to allow a male stranger to talk to them. So now they use the girls who have been betrayed, who are now older, they work their way up the hierarchy of the pimp business, and they now go to the girls in the mall, at the McDonald's and other places, and they bring girls in. And in India, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, all around the world, where you have people in poverty in search of a better way of living, they become susceptible to the inducement, or they get coerced or kidnapped, and there are women also involved, not in the same numbers as men, but they're also involved. We have to stand up. What do we believe in as a people? How do we want history to look back at us during this time period? And I think this book is a wake-up call that we need to know. When generations look back, just like with slavery, we're not going to be able to get away with, oh, that was the culture of the time. You know it's wrong, and you know there's something that needs to be done. What are you going to do?